Hi, I'm Peter Chan, National Weather Service Program Lead of the Alaska Weather Show, and I have a very important change notice to share with you. The last TV broadcast of the Alaska Weather Show in the traditional sense over the airwaves will be on Saturday, June 30th. Starting on July 1st and thereafter, the National Weather Service will provide a modified web-based version of the program on a new YouTube channel. So that means you'll be able to find us. We'll be moving from at AKwx TV to at NWS Alaska, and you can go ahead and subscribe to that channel now. There will be a public comment period from May 15th through July 30th, so please send your comments or concerns to nws.service-change-comments@noaa.gov. And if you have any other questions, you may reach carrie.haisley at noaa.gov and donald.moore@noaa.gov. Thank you for your patience and understanding.
Hello again, and welcome to this Friday's show. Up first, fire weather update. Again, some thunderstorm activity breaking out today. Across the interior may start a few new wildfires, but surface fuels in the interior are burnable in areas, and subsurface fuels are drying and warming, but are behind typical values for the first half of June. And again, the outlook through the weekend, cooler with areas of rain, will limit potential for new fires into the weekend, and already saw that today over yesterday. So going to the fire danger for grass, you can see greatly reduced from what it was yesterday, although still some high areas here, or very high areas north of the Alaska Range to the northwest there, and lesser extent off to the east, and low up through here in the northeast interior areas, Koyukuk valleys, due to some wetting and soaking rains that have moved in there. But an expanded area there over the Copper River Basin, a very high fire danger for grass right along the Copper River Valley area, and otherwise kind of an elevated area here just along and to the southeast of the lower Yukon River, but generally an improvement over what it was yesterday. Same thing with spruce, even lower fire danger as far as spruce goes here, but still some pretty high areas here north of the Alaska Range into the mid-Tanana Valley there, then kind of diminishing as you head east, and again back into low here over much of the remainder of the state. And from there, looking at hazardous weather graphic, nothing going on, no watches, warnings, or advisories out for the next 24 hours anyway. So just bounce through those, go to satellite imagery. Can see some clouds up through here that brought some pretty significant precipitation up to the north central interior areas during the day today. For example, Beaver picked up 2/3 of an inch of rainfall in the last 12 hours, and other areas here seeing soaking rains back along the Brooks Range and a little bit down into the Koyukuk Valley with lighter amounts down to the southwest. And another trough actually here, that low pressure area, right about this area here, give or take there, kind of a really widespread complex area, low pressure, centered basically over the eastern Aleutians. That continues to pull southeast flow, moisture, about 1/3 of an inch of rainfall Kodiak today. Lots of clouds, showers, areas of rain, drizzle over the Bering Sea, especially the central and southern areas, and some precipitation with this band right here, about 1/1500ths of an inch to Sitka today, within generally 1 to 2/10 over the Panhandle, northern Panhandle. Some of you are seeing less, and about 1 to 2/10 of an inch falling along the North Gulf Coast as well today. And actually off the chart, can't see it, the next big storm. So I'll just go to today's map. We had some thunderstorms basically over the central interior here, around the Koyukuk Valley and just to the south, the biggest concentrated area. Also some lightning strikes over toward Northway and Tok down in that part of the state, and then a little bit down the Yukon River there. And showers, again, some of those moderate to heavy up over the northern interior into the Brooks Range on the east side. Dry for the Arctic coast, kind of chilly afternoon highs there, 30, 31 degrees there from the central coast eastward. Northeast winds gusting 15 to 30 miles an hour. Point Lay had northeast winds gusting to 40 miles an hour today. And again, this trough bringing more rain into the Kodiak Island area and some showers over the northern Panhandle. There's that weakening, slowly moving low pressure area now just north of the eastern Aleutians. Actually, you can probably pick out a couple other centers there. I just drew those in as troughs there. leading to areas of light rain, fog, and drizzle here from the central Aleutians or showers up to the Pribilofs, back into the eastern Aleutian areas. And for tonight, that system kind of weakens and slips back to the southwest a little bit there. Keeps some moisture in over the Pribilof Islands. That's going to keep, especially under the precipitation area here, quite an area of IFR, low clouds and fog there. Continued south flow, make for the same pattern here for the Alaska Peninsula, especially on the Pacific side. Kodiak Island, light rain, fog, drizzle again. Maybe you have a little bit better in that half mile you had earlier in fog today, but not much improvement there. Another trough slowly moving northward. That'll bring another round of light rain up to the North Gulf Coast, or continue it there and maybe pick the showers up over the mountainous terrain of south central Alaska into the Copper River Basin. And still looking at some shower activity here along this trough there, extending from the northwest Kotzebue Sound area into the upper Yukon Valley. So showers continue there tonight up to the Brooks Range. Stays dry on the central and western Arctic coast. And shower chances continue mainly over the central and northern panhandle, dry to the south. And for tomorrow, we'll see that trough, especially aloft, kicks through. So that's going to keep showers going over the northern southeast coast. Could break out to some afternoon sun down over the southern panhandle, hopefully. And then thunderstorm activity, looking at highs staying below 70 degrees in most areas of interior Alaska, but still enough instability. You may get some thunderstorms as far south as the Talkeetna Mountains due to an upper level trough swinging through, adding a little bit more lift to the atmosphere than otherwise would be with the temperatures that cool. Otherwise, chance of thunderstorms again, Tanana Valley, back into lower Yukon Valley, northern Kuskokwim Valley, just a risk of an isolated thunderstorm or two there. Weak low here, just west of Kivalina, keeps it showery over Kotzebue Sound, Seward Peninsula, and along this trough now into the Kobuk Valley to the Brooks Range there. North slope, though, dry, maybe some fog, low clouds, central eastern Arctic coast with much lighter winds now on the western Arctic coast. Still a little breezy there on the east side with brisk wind advisories out through tomorrow for the marine areas up there. Chance of showers, northern Bering Sea, lots of low clouds, fog, maybe some drizzle here down toward the Pribilofs, and then back into the showers with this low continuing to weaken now, but still kicking off some showers for Adak and Atka. Then the next big storm here, as you can see, coming onto the charts, 984 millibars, and that's going to start increasing the winds and rain. Gale warning should stay south of the area, or at least south of Kodiak and the Alaska Peninsula until probably Saturday evening, but look for the wind and rain to increase in those areas during the afternoon hours on Saturday. And then Sunday, this low actually tracks north and then pulls northwestward to just west of Cape Newenham by the afternoon Sunday. So good gale force winds ahead of this front will diminish for Kodiak Island, but look for 40-knot winds to come up to the Barren Islands, all of the North Gulf Coast into Kamishak Bay, and small craft advisory level winds for Cook Inlet with even stronger mountain pass winds through south central Alaska, through the mountainous areas, south central Alaska, Turnagain Arm, down toward Portage, and periods of rain, maybe heavy at times for the North Gulf Coast into Prince William Sound. Just a chance of rain reaching the north coast of the Panhandle in the afternoon, otherwise high pressure making for a dry day there with maybe a few sun breaks, especially earlier in the day as the clouds increase in the afternoon. This trough may kick off a thunderstorm or two over the northwest interior south of the Brooks Range. Look for some areas of sunshine, though, and a little bit drier over interior Alaska, and so temperatures will be back into lower to mid-70s, especially the central and eastern areas, and that could kick off a thunderstorm or two there over the southeast interior north of the Alaska Range, and then pretty showery here, pretty showery conditions continue for the Bering Sea and Aleutians. Lows tonight in the 40s everywhere except 50 to 55 in the Panhandle, followed by highs lower 60s, southern southeast coast, otherwise 55 to 60 up to the north, and upper 50s to lower 60s for the remainder of the southern part of the state. And for highs or for lows, again in the 40s for much of the area, and even the Panhandle now down into the 40s. For the highs, a little milder down here, maybe a little bit more sun for the southern southeast coast, 60, 65, and upper 50s to near 60 for south central Alaska, maybe 63 for the Copper River Basin, 65 maybe McGrath-Nikolai, upper 40s for Kodiak Island, and lows tonight, 40s to near 50 in the central interior, cooling into the mid to upper 20s central and eastern Arctic coast, and lower to mid 30s out to the west. followed by highs tomorrow in the 60s over the interior. And for the lows the following morning in the 40s, followed by highs a little warmer here over the eastern interior, and even out toward Nome, high near 60. Lows 30s to lower 40s for the Aleutians, Bering Sea, followed by highs in the 40s, and lows again near 40, followed by highs in the mid-40s.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Saturday morning's flying weather looking something like this. We've got IFR, central Bering Sea, on down to the Aleutians, improving back to the west. Then marginal VFR right up to the southwest coast into western Norton Sound. Eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, marginal VFR, Kodiak Island, in over the southwest interior. And Southern Cook Inlet on up along the western Alaska Range. IFR along the North Gulf Coast that extends down into the Panhandle, and IFR up here over the eastern North Slope. For the afternoon, lingering marginal VFR along areas of the Brooks Range, but North Slope and Arctic Coast, VFR, interior, good VFR. Still a little bit of IFR here hung up along the Coast Range, and then marginal VFR, most of the Panhandle, but becoming VFR down toward Dixon Entrance and over toward Stewart, Hyder, Misty Fjords and those areas. And marginal VFR for Kodiak Island, as well as the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range. Really good, though, over the interior flying weather-wise. Low conditions, of course, this time of year, always out over the Bering Sea. Bering Strait area, northern Bering, another band of IFR farther to the west, down to the Aleutians. And then for Sunday morning, IFR, northern Bering Sea, on up toward the Bering Strait, and south into the west central Aleutians there to Adak-Atka area. Remainder of the Bering Sea, Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians, Bristol Bay, marginal VFR for the day, or for the morning Sunday. And again, still marginal VFR up along the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range there. IFR, Prince William Sound, continued southeasterly flow pulling moisture up out of the Gulf there inland, and not too bad. Some marginal VFR northern Panhandle, otherwise VFR. And for the afternoon, not much change. The area of IFR here shifts eastward toward the central and south coast, but doesn't quite make it, probably until Sunday evening. VFR over the inside waters, marginal VFR up to the north, and some marginal VFR up into the southeastern Copper River Basin, Prince William Sound, Kenai Peninsula, back in toward Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island. But you can see the interior here looking good. VFR all the way up to the Arctic coast and actually into the Arctic Ocean. Less IFR out over the northern Bering Sea here. St. Matthew Island right up through the strait across Avunga and Gamble. It looks like staying mostly off the coast there for the Kivalina, Point Hope, Cape Lisburne area. Kind of just marginal VFR areas for the Bering Sea and the Aleutians, and then some more IFR coming in with the next system farther out to the west. Passes Anatuvik, marginal VFR. Pretty marginal for Adigan as well for the day on Saturday. Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR, likely only on the eastern entrances, better off to the west. Rainy, marginal VFR to start early and then becoming VFR probably by noontime or through the afternoon. And windy, VFR. Isabel, VFR. Mentasta, VFR. But Tanita, marginal VFR, especially on the eastern entrance. And for Portage, starting out IFR, but looking like a marginal VFR kind of afternoon, especially on the eastern entrance for the Saturday afternoon. Chilcoot and White, marginal VFR. Freezing levels here, 4,000 feet. Down to the south, about 4,000 to 6,000 feet here over southern Alaska, around 8,000 feet over the north central interior, then cooling off up toward the Arctic coast there. And from there, moving on to icing. Got some potential for some isolated moderate rime icing here across southern Alaska, south central areas, Kenai Peninsula, North Gulf Coast, trailing off into the northern Panhandle. But a much more significant area of icing here starting to show up along the Alaska Peninsula, Sitkinak, with the heavier stuff coming up toward Sand Point in the afternoon. That's considerable moderate there. And moving on to the jet stream, westerly flow, kind of an upper trough lifting northeastward here. here. South of that, 95 knots out of the west, pretty light everywhere else. Southwest 65 there across Bristol Bay. And for 9,000 feet, southeast 35 to 40 knot winds there from Kuskokwim Delta down toward Kodiak Island. And at 9,000 feet, southeast 65 knots here with a stronger low south of the Alaska Peninsula. So winds on the increase here, Kodiak Island and the Alaska Peninsula, mostly in the afternoon toward tomorrow evening. Pretty light up over the interior. Turbulence-wise, moderate turbulence developing Kodiak Island, Aleutian Range areas.
So my heart is definitely racing. I don't know about anyone else's. This is the stuff nerds dream of.
10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, that's gonna 5, 4, 3, 2.
That countdown you just heard? We'll get back to that in a minute. Last episode, we saw the epic launch of ICESat-2, NASA's newest state-of-the-art ice-observing satellite. But now that that's in orbit, the pressure to deliver results is on.
Between launch and, the first ground returns, took 17, 18 days or something like this. It's a time when you're quite nervous.
9 years ago, Dr. Torsten Marcus took over as the lead project scientist for ICESat-2 during a time when the mission needed a champion.
You start fighting for a mission over, 9 years now.
So when ICESat-2 was turned on for the first time 18 days after it was launched, only then would the science team know if the whole thing had worked. And it did. If it sounds like there's a lot of noise in the background, that's because Torsten is being interviewed from a plane 1,500 feet in the air. IceBridge was tasked with the job of bridging the data between the end of ICESat's mission and the beginning of ICESat-2, about a 9-year difference.
The goal is that it would run until ICESat-2 launched and then would have overlap with ICESat-2 as well, so we can get a really long, well-calibrated time series from IceBridge.
As the deputy project scientist for Operation IceBridge, Britt works closely with Torsten to make sure the two missions are syncing up.
The timing was everything during that mission, which was a real challenge because not only do we need to...
Basically what you need to take away is getting an airplane and a satellite in space to fly over the same flight path at the same time and collect matching data is really, really hard. IceBridge was tasked with two objectives: check the accuracy of ICESat-2's data over land ice and over sea ice. They were able to lock in the land ice data fairly quickly in the mission, but the sea ice data...
It was really tricky. We waited day after day. Do we fly the sea ice? It's still on our list.
7, 6, that's gonna 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Mark on the overpass 0435, 350.
Here's what just happened. A plane 1,500 feet up and a satellite 308 miles up measured the same sea ice at the same time. This moment finally linked veteran mission Operation IceBridge's data to that of its new sister mission, ICESat-2. Two projects that, until now, were separate for nearly 10 years.
It's a very satisfying feeling because you do something that is meaningful and in the bigger picture. And yeah, it's very satisfying.
Our search for knowledge doesn't end here. Grace Follow-On and ICESat-2, the two satellite missions that launched this year, will continue to bring in incredible data for the foreseeable future. The steady drumbeat of campaigns in the field goes on, but most of all, the people who look for answers will never stop searching. And from our perspective, it's pretty clear why. What is your favorite planet in the solar system?
My favorite planet is the planet Earth.
What? Earth? Really?
The Earth, obviously.
Favorite planet in the solar system? Earth, right? We live on it. It's a really important one.
Favorite planet is Earth.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when you look out at the other planets, they're absolutely fascinating. They've got all sorts of interesting systems going on. They've got dust storms. But then when you're on another planet, looking back at Earth, I mean, it's just incredible.
Whenever you go in different places, it looks so different, so amazing. It's just, I love the planet Earth. It's just a very special planet. This is our home.
We've seen things far beyond the solar system. But even with all that, even the amazing things we've seen, one of the most amazing is the Earth itself.
It's got to be Earth. It's got to be Earth.
It's got to be here. I like the polar regions up here of Earth. Yeah, sorry. It's very boring.
Earth is good.
Earth is good.
We live here, it sustains our life.
I'm not going to turn my back on it.
It's got water, it's got ice, it's got vegetation. I mean, it's rich with life. And so studying Earth is a very, very rewarding career. And I think if we were on any other planet, we would be trying to get to Earth as quickly as we could.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
And for the coastal water forecast for the south coast of the Panhandle here, west-southwesterlies at about 10 knots. Central coast, south-southeast, 10 to 15 knots with 5-foot seas. And a little breezier on the north coast there, winds east-southeast at 15 to 20 knots. Northern inner channels, southwest at 15, 3-foot seas. Light variable winds here for Stevens Passage. And northwest at 10 for Clarence Strait. For the day Sunday on the south coast, south to southeast winds 15 to 20 knots, and the central coast east-southeast at 20, and then stronger winds here on the north coast from the east at 25 to 35 knots with seas 9 to 12 feet. Stevens Passage, or Clarence Strait, northwest at 10, and then south winds at 15 knots for Stevens Passage on up through Lynn Canal with seas only 3 feet. Prince William Sound for Saturday, southeast winds at 10 knots with 2-foot seas. North Gulf Coast tomorrow, light variable winds at 10 knots with 5-foot seas. And Cook Inlet, northeast to southeast winds, 10 to 15 knots, seas 2 to 3 feet. Southeast at 20 for the Barren Islands and Kemishak Bay. Small craft advisories for southeast winds at 25 knots with 7-foot seas. And for Sunday, Cook Inlet, small craft advisories, east to northeast winds, 25 to 30 knots, strongest south of the Foreland Seas, 7 to 8 feet. And then good gales coming into the Barren Islands and Kemishak Bay. For the Barren Islands from the south at 40 knots, southeast 40 knots for Kemishak Bay, seas up above 10 feet. And also for the North Gulf Coast, pretty good gales in the forecast for Sunday. Southeast 40 knots, 12 to 13-foot seas, and Prince William Sound, southeast winds at 30 knots with seas up to 7 feet. Kodiak Island, small craft advisory, south winds tomorrow, 30 knots, seas 6 feet. For the Alaska Peninsula, east to southeast winds, 15 to 25. And for Bristol Bay, east winds, 25 knots with 3-foot seas. And for Sunday, Kodiak Island, south winds 30 knots, seas 12 to 15 feet. For the Alaska Peninsula, looking at west to southwest winds, 20 to 30 knots there, with seas running 6 to 11 feet. In Bristol Bay, small craft advisories southwest at 25, seas 6 feet. Western Aleutians for Saturday, west-northwest, 20 knots with seas 5 to 6 feet. Not too bad for Adak and Atka. Northwest at 15 to 20 knots with 3 to 4 foot seas. Fox Islands, light variable wind conditions. And for Sunday, for the eastern Aleutian areas, variable to west winds at about 10 to 20 knots. Adak variable winds 10 to 15 knots. And for the western Aleutians, winds variable at 10 to 15 knots, with seas out that way only 3 to 5 feet. And for the Yukon Delta coast tomorrow, east winds of 15 knots. Same thing for St. Matthew, St. George, and St. Paul Islands. Southeast 20 for the Kuskokwim Delta coast. St. Lawrence Island, winds northeast at 15 knots. And for Sunday, St. Lawrence Island, Yukon Delta coast, northeasterlies of 15. Northeast 25 for the Kuskokwim Delta coast. And for the Pribilof, St. Matthew Island, winds northwest at 15 knots. And brisk wind advisories for the central and eastern Arctic coast tomorrow. Out of the east, 30 knots here on the east side. Central coast and west side, 25 to 30 knots there. And then much lighter here for the Chukchi Sea, more variable at 10 to 15 knots. And for Sunday, Wales up to Cape Thompson, north to northeast at 10 knots, and then 15 to 20 knot southerly winds for the western Arctic coast. Central coast, east at about 20, and for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, east winds 20 to 25 knots. And for tonight, trough brings another surge of moisture up toward the North Gulf Coast for periods of light rain and fog from Kodiak Island right on up into Prince William Sound. Chance of showers continues over the northern panhandle, dry to the south, and some showers of this trough over the north central interior, and mostly mountainous showers over south central Alaska, Copper River Basin. And then for tomorrow, here's that next big storm coming up, starting to bear down Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula in the afternoon with those increasing winds and rain. Otherwise, yet another trough here kicking through. Keep a chance of showers over the northern panhandle, North Gulf Coast, south central Alaska, with afternoon thunderstorms, possibly as far south as Talkeetnas. And then for Sunday, that storm pulls into the northwest, gusty winds and rain over south and southwest.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.